Hello there guys, it's Michael again with another DSP spreadsheet because I felt like it. I've been thinking about his redemption run of Dark Souls and I thought to myself it would be nice to compare the two playthroughs in terms of time spent, views and the build that he went for. Um, this was mainly just out of curiosity, and to be honest, it's not as interesting as the cheers stuff that I did last week. But a few things cropped up that I was surprised by. See, the first thing I've looked at, because it was probably the easiest to gather the information on, was his final build. See, in the original, he went heavy on endurance and vitality, relatively well, strongish on strength and dex. He's put some in faith, but I don't think he barely knew what magic was then. And he's wound up with a level 93 character after 171 parts. Surprisingly, when I watched his boss fight with Win from that run, he doesn't seem to take a lot of damage. I think it's all down to the fact that his vitality is so large, and he's wearing some kind of medium armor that I can't remember the name of, and he's using like the man serpent sword, which it does the job. So that's what he came through in 2013, and in contrast, on the redemption run, um, there's the stat differences. Red for down, green for up. You'll notice there's only one difference in soul level, which I'm sort of surprised by. I don't know, to be honest. Um, so I mean, that could be theoretically a slight improvement, because that's really what I was looking for when I compared these two runs, was to see if there was any improvement in sort of the speed at which he played the game, the gear that he wore, the build that he had, just to see if he was actually getting better, um, seeing as 3.5 years kind of passed between him finishing one run and then starting the other. Just see what his information retention is like. So yeah, he's this like redemption run. He's not going so mad on vitality, and he's went heavy into endurance and strength, which enabled him to get through with the Havel set and the Havel shield, um, and the Black Knight Halberd dropped for him, so he had a weapon that was pretty much end game very early on, which is very lucky to have and very nice. It's probably my favourite Black Knight weapon, but all those extra points in endurance and strength have just really enabled him to tank up, which, it's kind of weird because those two, like, both characters are tanks. It's just that one is a tank through vitality and the other is a tank through gear. So he's reached kind of like the same end goal, but through different means, which is, it's kind of a surprise. I think when Phil kind of plays these games, he tends to put a lot of value into things like vitality and sometimes strength. He likes to be survivable, which, it's absolutely fine. It's how I play the games, to be honest. You can see there, in terms of parts, there's less of them. But as we come to the next sheet, you'll be quite surprised. Well, I say quite surprised. I don't know what your expectations are for this. So next I decided to compare time, and we've got all three of them here. I've went through the parts and just basically rounded them up to the nearest minute. I didn't really want to be that precise, and his part sizes, on the first two runs at least, were actually quite short. Because if you remember, when he first played Dark Souls, he got to Playtown, got scared, kind of quit the game, and then came back to it a year and a half later. So what you've effectively got, because of the delay between the two, well, basically between the start of it and the resumption of it, I'm treating them like two separate playthroughs. Because, to be honest, so was Phil. So the original one was 65 parts, and took him 10 hours. So that's not actually bad going, considering he was very much underprepared and not exactly given much direction. 10 hours to get the Blighttown's not too bad. He's kind of stumbled his way through it, but he's got there. And then he made the return, which led him basically from Blighttown to the conclusion of the game. And that was basically 21 hours of footage. So when you put it all together, really, that's like 30 and a half hours, which, considering how much he struggled and like what a tank he became, he did alright for first run. To take 30 hours on a game that, like, my first run was 80. So it's quite weird. You've got a guy that wants to be very survivable, but he also wants to, like, he kind of wants to get through games. When he plays them, he kind of consumes them but doesn't digest them, if you like that analogy. And I just thought that was quite weird. I'm always kind of shocked at how quick he seems to like get through a game. I think you look at the part numbers and you just think, wow, he's been completely stopped dead in his tracks. But the reality is, in terms of footage, he's got 30 and a half hours there on that first run. And then the redemption run, for some reason, was 5 hours longer, which wasn't the result I was expecting. I was expecting with this being his second run. Granted, he's got there's been a year, there's been a gap of several years between the two. So when it comes to his memory, it might not be the best. But still, extra 5 hours had to come from somewhere. And I think how that's come about is, in the original run, he used a lot of summons on quite a few of the bosses. As far as I know, with the redemption run, he did it all himself, I think. So fair play to him. So it was an extra 5 hours, but still, even so, 35 hours for a Dark Souls run isn't too bad. It's also weird as well with when it comes to filling time. When he did his Dark Souls 2 run, he mentioned that he did grinding off screen. So maybe in the original run that was the case. I don't think it's the case in the redemption run, because a lot of that he was just kind of streaming, and he was back on Twitch, so he was, recording that pretty much every day in front of an audience, and I can't imagine him taking extra time just to grind. It's such a weird thing when you think about, like, in terms of builds, they're kind of two different characters, but with the same amount of soul investment in them. In terms of like the soul level, there's only one difference. But with the time, having that 5-hour difference, it did surprise me. But obviously, he's not summoning for the boss fight, so I think some of the times come through on that. And some of the bosses he beat first time of asking. One Steven Smo, and I think Nito as well was done at the first attempt. So yeah, so far we've got like 2 tank builds that take different approaches to the same goal. You've got a time situation which isn't really, it's just not something I can get reliable data for, to be honest, because they're playthroughs from two different eras of Phil's production, really. And then we come to views. Right. So what I've done here is I've went through all these videos, tallied up the views, I've come up with an average, and then for these views here, anything that's above average is green, anything below average, red. I've made a note of these peak views and these lowest views. And when it comes to the numbers themselves, we've got to obviously bear in mind that his original run has been on YouTube for nearly 4 years, and even before that, his return run it's been there since 2011. So a lot of views have racked up in that time, plus couple in the fact that at that time we would have had a larger audience, and those two just kind of magnify. I'm not necessarily interested in the view numbers themselves in terms of a way to see like how his audience has fallen. What I'm looking for really is viewer retention. So marking out the above and below average ones helps give you an idea of the momentum that the playthrough has. So you see here the original 66 part 1 had a that's a ridiculous first number when you think about it. 139,400 views. Granted, it has been on YouTube for like 6 years, but that's impressive. So in terms of like total views, you've got 1.6 million, and this first like streak of 13 videos gets in 605,000. So that's like a third of that playlist. A third of the views come from that first run, and kind of staggers off after that. It's different as well, obviously, with playthroughs and such, is if there's a boss in there that people are interested in, like Ornstein and Small, there's going to be a peak there. It's hard to tell with Phil's old videos because he just didn't exactly title them at all. Just part 1, part 2, etc. Even in the return one, he didn't do that, which kind of annoyed me. But As is the case, part one is usually always going to be your best video, and with Phil's, his lowest always seems to be kind of in the home stretch. It's kind of weird. It's always going to trail off, really, especially with these long playthroughs of like tens of videos and like 107 parts for his return run. Although his return run gathered like a better streak of momentum. You see that total views is down a bit, but obviously he's picking up where he left off on a playthrough, and not only that, he's picking up on a playthrough that he left a year and a half ago. So his audience will have changed, their expectations would have changed, their anticipation would have changed. Even so, I think Phil was right to basically judge it as a separate playlist and a separate playthrough. And as usual, part one is your best return. I'm getting an average of like 8,000 views. Yeah, he's average on the original one 25. Crikey. But when you think though, he's got that huge number to start with. In fact, he's got some seriously huge numbers. That first 10, and then it all just kind of settles down. When it comes to his return as well, he started out with a streak, and then he got a second wind, which is, it's slightly difficult to read into. I'm gonna guess it's because, well, his fan base was a bit more, I don't want to say steady, but it feels like those two there felt maybe like they could have been a blip. And if he'd kept those numbers up, then that would have, that streak would have carried on for weeks. When I say weeks, actually, it's probably I'd say, what was he uploading them days? Because, that streak could be a single day. That's the most annoying thing about him. He just, he does himself a disservice. Well, yeah, a lot of the time. 871,000 views. Still pretty good considering that is 107 parts. See, when you say it like parts, it's like, it sounds exhausting. And these numbers kind of show how the audience trails off. It comes back in for the occasional boss. And as usual, it seems to trail off almost before the home stretch. 3,000 views at part 98, and when he concludes it, he gets a big influx. Interestingly, the only video that he put a custom title on was the last one, where he says, "Oh yeah, I've done it." That video is 8 minutes long, and it's just the credits. So that's 22,000 people getting sucked into that. I love that. For the actual Gwyn boss fight, there's like 12,000 that can, I don't know, wear a t-shirt and say they were there. I think with this playthrough as well, there's bigger peaks and longer valleys. So you get things like that, 17,000. Like, I don't even know where that came from. I think one of them was when he was coming up to Nito. So again, I think it's just boss anticipation. And as I mentioned, the streak there was 16. It's a bit more of a bit more of an even split and a healthier split really in terms of his first streak, 465,000. But then he has that second wind, which helps soften that quite a bit. So, what about Phil in the modern day with his smaller audience? Definitely felt like the redemption run was something that he was putting together, mainly to drum up a bit of interest, get a heartbeat started on his channel just a little bit. He'd not that long moved back to Switch, I think. So he was obviously trying to get people to transition over to that. And you see from the numbers here, less parts, 92 parts, but the videos are longer. And of course, he's got a very different audience. Some things remain the same. Highest amount of views in part 1, lowest in part 87, which again is closing in on the end. Total views 361,000. So again, in terms of actual audience, it's come down quite a bit. When you consider this is a gap of, that was 2013, so you're talking 4 years. It's come down from 1.6 to 871,000, and now it's 361,000. But again, time's always a factor. The longer something's on YouTube, the more views it's going to garner. And Redemption Run's obviously the most recent one there. So I'm not going to take that as gospel just yet. One thing I'll say, whilst the average is lower, it allows for his audience retention to actually look a little brighter. He's got a much longer above average streak, 149,000, but again, the problem there is it seems to take up almost half of his total views. We see it a lot with Phil. There's just a lot of views that trail off. I don't necessarily think it's a specific Phil problem. I think it's just how playthroughs tend to be. But it's yeah, you see here his below average streak is pretty much 2/3 of the playthrough. And it just tends to go down part upon part. And it's really been Phil's biggest issue is basically getting the audience together and getting them to basically stick around. And this helps visualize that in terms of what his peaks are, and where his downtime seems to be. And when it comes to Dark Souls, it's probably one of his most popular series of playthroughs. It's like Fred Fuck says, they like to see him struggle, and you've got to kind of wonder, can you stick around for 30 hours to watch someone struggle? It's hard to tell whether Phil has improved greatly in the last 5 or 6 years. I mean, since then he's played a lot of Dark Souls, but and he's played a lot of Dark Souls Dark Souls clones. And when it comes to his builds, he always seems to favour the same type of build. So in terms of his playstyle, he's got one that he likes to stick with. But as we've seen, really, in terms of time, granted it's not a scientific fact, especially given how we used to do playthroughs, how we used to do stuff offline and grind, and it is interesting, I guess, to see where his audience has been through the years, in terms of numbers, in terms of where they show up, where they don't, and it's probably the same with quite a few of the guys that have been around for a long time, where their audience kind of peaks and then just kind of tapers off. Phil's decline has been slow, and I don't want to say steady, because steady seems to have some sort of positive connotations. I suppose from his perspective, he can probably budget better because he knows what numbers usually turn up, what's going to come in, or maybe he did before the turn to Twitch, which is you're a lot more reliant on other people throwing money at you. I don't know. You see, I can't really come up with a specific conclusion about this, really. I will say, when I was watching some of the Redemption run, it felt a lot smoother. He felt a little bit more better equipped. Maybe that he had a little bit more knowledge, but he still had a lot of there was a lot of fill in that playthrough. So I think that about does it. Yeah. Thank you guys a lot for watching my last video, by the way. I'm really, really touched that, it's my first video on the guy, and it's just looking at a graph, but getting close to 150 views on it now, and it's really nice. It's really nice to see numbers go up on my analytics, and just really, really touched that a video of mine has got out with double figures, and it means people are actually taking an interest in them. So I'm really glad for that, and I'm very happy for your support. And I'll see you guys next time, whenever that is.